Super duper pumped up for this weekend. We've got the AFL season kicking off on Thursday night, the AFLW Grand Final happening on Saturday, and the Formula One is back in Melbourne for another year of Formula One motorsport. Super duper pumped for that, but we're not going to talk about Formula One. We're not talking motorsport. This is Doc's Footy Talk. We're talking football, AFL and AFLW, back for another week. Huge weekend of football ahead of us, and a huge weekend that we've had just behind us as well. AFLW's just had its last round of the season. We're going to go through all the games in that. We'll take a look at the grand final ahead. We're going to predict the league best and fairest, the All-Australian team. Going to revisit my mid-year All-Australian team. And also huge AFL stuff to talk about. We've got top 8 predictions from experts. Mark Robinson's just released his top 50 on the Herald Sun. Always very controversial topic to talk about there. And we're going to have a look at all the games in round 1, including the game that I'm most excited to have a look at. And trust me, it is not the Western Bulldogs. We're going to get started. We're going to get started right away with the AFLW. Thank you very much for coming back to us. If you've just joined us from last week, if you've just joined us for the first time, well then welcome to Doc's Footy Talk. We're talking football all the time. AFL, AFLW. Let's get stuck into it right now with the AFLW, and huge weekend of AFLW. We had 3 games that ultimately decided the grand final for this weekend. We'll go through all of them as well, but first we'll have a look at the wooden spoon game, Fremantle-Carlton, that happened up in Fremantle. Very good game. And this is probably one of the games that make you look and see, God, I love women's football. Both sides really had nothing to play for. They were already out of finals contention. Maybe the wooden spoon was probably the only prize for the loser of this game, but still, both these teams played like they had something to really play for. Fremantle came out on top, 9-5-59, Carlton 6-12-48. Really thrilling contest between the two sides that ultimately finished in the bottom 2 spots on the ladder. Dana Hooker with a best on-ground effort with 25 disposals and a goal. Lisa Webb, 16 disposals. Ebony Antonio, 15 disposals. Cara Dillon, 15 disposals. Amy Lavelle, the only multiple goal kicker for the Dockers, with 2. While for the Blues, Taylor Harris had her best game, I reckon. 2 goals from 15 disposals. We'll talk about her really shortly. Sarah Hosking, 15 disposals and 9 tackles. Alison Downey also kicked 2 goals for the Blues. And Katie Loynes had 14 disposals. A lot of lead changes in this game, and a lot of effort in this as well. Watching this game, you could have sensed that both teams they didn't want the wooden spoon. It was a game that didn't really mean much in context of the premiership season. Both these teams were out of finals contention, but somehow these two sides just went at it hammer and tong, and it's the Dockers that came out on top. Probably deserved the win, to be fair. Let's not take away anything from Carlton, because the Blues were very impressive. They had probably 8 more inside 50s than the Dockers did for the entire match. Inaccuracy probably plagued them. When you look at that, 30 inside 50s for 6-12, they probably should have done a lot better than that. But in terms of how they've gone in this game and compared to games gone by, particularly in the past few weeks, this is probably a much better performance from the Blues, who ultimately were without their captain for most of the year. Very impressed with Sarah Hosking. We mentioned earlier she had 15 disposals, 9 tackles as well. She's probably going to be the best and fairest. Not many other Blues will come close. You know, when you think of high-profile Blues, you're thinking Darcy Vesio didn't have a great year, didn't get the midfield service she got last year when she won the goal-kicking award. Taylor Harris has been hot and cold. We'll get to her shortly, because a lot of people just seem to criticise Taylor Harris because she's such a big name, but she'll be a star. And Katie Loynes has also been consistently solid in a team that has pretty much lacked contributors as well. The Dockers, we mentioned last week, they're in a good space. They're in a good space going forward. They've got a really good player in Cara Bowers coming back into the side. Dana Hook is in a strong position to be a 2-time club best and fairest. She had another great game. The Dockers, they look good. They look really good. And to point it out to you, this side went scoreless in the first half of the first round of this season. And from there, they've actually continually improved as the week's gone on. There's definitely a lot to like about this Fremantle side going forward. Fremantle's chances next year, I think they're going to be a top 4 side. Then, particularly when you got 2 teams to come into the league next year, you got North Melbourne and Geelong. I think they're going to be very impressive. A lot of people will most likely sleep on the Dockers. They're not going to rate them too much, but I think from what I've seen over the past month, the Dockers are going to be a force to be reckoned with, I reckon. Just to show you how tough this contest was, in a game that I want to tell you about this moment in the game that I thought was really, really fascinating. It was in the third quarter. Hayley Miller was running back with the flight of the ball, and coming at her was Taylor Harris. And what you're probably going to hear, it wasn't pretty. They collided, and it was a huge collision. Harris's knee hit the rib of Hayley Miller, and both were sprawled on the floor, along with Dockers defender Taylor Breslin. This is exactly why I love women's football. It's the competitive nature. Now, a lot of people will be quick to jump on them and criticize lack of scoring, lack of free-flowing effort. Women's football has been around far, far less than the men's football, and I completely understand that. They're not going to develop their skills overnight. They're not going to develop skills and a free-flowing game like the men will. And personally, I think they've improved a lot. But it's courageous acts like this that make you think and go, wow, these women just leave everything on the field. That's exactly how the game should be played. I like the free-flowing. I like it when it's free-flowing. Don't get me wrong about that. But when it comes to moments like these where these women just throw caution into the wind and commit themselves to the contest, that's where women's football is at the moment. I absolutely love it. Speaking of Taylor Harris, she had a really good game on the weekend. 2 goals, 15 disposals. There's still a lot of people there that are criticising Taylor Harris for a lack of impact. And I can sort of understand that. People would like to think Taylor Harris is somewhat of a poster child in the AFLW. Really tall, really athletic. She has a really good kicking style and is a capable forward. But it's so easy to forget sometimes that she's only 20 years of age. And like most key position players in any form of Aussie football, they're going to take some time to develop. Now, personally, I think I've liked her season. She's been okay. Hasn't set the world on fire. But then again, neither has Carlton. But there's a lot of room to work with Taylor Harris here. I think there's still a lot in her game that's going to suggest that she's going to be a very, very good forward. Definitely going to be a goal kicking award winner. I'm still waiting on a name for that, to be honest. But she's going to be a star. Somewhere down the line, she's going to be a star. On to the Friday night game. GWS taking on Brisbane. This was one of the 2 matches of the round, personally for me. If Brisbane won, they had a step in the door for a grand final spot. GWS win, they almost locked themselves in for a grand final spot. However, Brisbane absolutely demolished GWS. We didn't expect this coming. A lot of people, myself included, I'd thought GWS were going to beat Brisbane. Brisbane hadn't shown enough, but the Brisbane Lions absolutely proved everyone wrong. And this is where they are at their best, when people write them off. A lot of people wrote them off last year before the season even began. Then they went through the season undefeated. They've been okay for the most part of this year. They've won games. They've won games pretty well. They've lost games that they probably shouldn't have lost. But this performance was an example of how great Brisbane can be as a football side. GWS kicked the first goal of the game. Brisbane then responded with 7 unanswered. They got to a lead of about 38 points early in the second quarter. It was 6 goals to 1 at quarter time. They kicked another one after quarter time to make it 38 points. In the end, it was Brisbane by 40 points. 10-4-64. GWS 3-6-24. Sabrina Frederick-Traub, a real instigator in that first quarter, had 3 goals in the first quarter, ended up with 4 for the night, and also 18 disposals and 5 marks for the match. She's a menace, and she's probably the one that's going to drive Brisbane to premiership glory next week. Also, Jess Wushner kicked 3 goals. She was spectacular. Probably didn't kick enough to win the goal kicking award, though. We'll get to that shortly. Ali Anderson, 25 disposals. Emily Bates, 21 disposals. Both of them superb for Brisbane. Whilst for the GWS Giants, Alicia Eva had 18 disposals and 6 tackles. Jess Dalpos, 14 disposals. And the captain, Amanda Ferrugia, 14 disposals. No shame in GWS's loss here on Friday night. It was disappointing, but there is no shame with how GWS have played this year. A lot of people expected them not to contend. I personally had them 7th at the start of the year. But the GWS Giants, they've proved so many people wrong, and they've ended up, I think it was 4th out of all sides. They've ended up in the top 4. So that was a really, really good performance from the Giants. We mentioned last week, their recruiting strategy was absolutely amazing. You know, we talked about Alicia Eva and Courtney Gum. They've both been outstanding, probably the 2 recruits of the year. Maybe you also throw Tegan Cunningham into the mix from Melbourne. But those 2 were the main reasons why GWS was so good this year. But it's other players in the Giants like Cora Staunton. I thought she had a marvellous year for somebody who had spent so long playing Gaelic football as opposed to Aussie football. And also Tanya Hetherington deserves a mention as well. Real veteran presence down back. And she's led from the front almost every game. GWS, they will most likely continue to develop their younger players. Nicola Barr is going to be a really good player. I think, you look at girls such as Jacinda Barclay, Rebecca Beeson's really good. Love Erin McKinnon's work around the ground as a ruck woman. There is still a lot of potential in this GWS side, and they're going to be a real contender next year for the flag. There's going to be about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 contenders for the flag next year, like there is this year. So don't despair, Giants fans. There is still a lot of love for your future. Which leads to the next game. Now, the Brisbane Lions had to rely on Melbourne to lose this game against the Bulldogs, and it was an absolute arm wrestle for 4 quarters. And fortunately for the Lions fans, they did get the result they were looking for. Melbourne down by 2 points to the Western Bulldogs, 5-3-33. Melbourne 4-7-31 in what was blustery conditions. It was a preliminary final atmosphere at Whitten Oval on Saturday night. And the Bulldogs, they stamped their ticket to the grand final. No team could overtake from there on out. The Bulldogs were brilliant. Emma Carney had 20 disposals, 4 tackles a goal. Did her league best and fairest chances no harm. I thought Jenna Bruton had her best game in Bulldogs colours. She had 18 disposals and 10 tackles. Monique Conti was really good, had 13 disposals, kicked the goal. Lauren Spark was absolutely incredible in the back line. Kept Tegan Cunningham, who sat 2nd in the league goal-kicking table ahead of this round. Kept her disposalless. 0 disposals. No kicks, no handballs, no mark. Also picking up 11 disposals in the process. While for Melbourne, Karen Paxman was at her best again, 20 disposals and a goal. Loved Catherine Smith's game, 11 disposals and a goal. Daisy Pearce had the 17 touches. Probably didn't make as much of an impact as I thought she could, but she still got herself plenty of the footy. And Elise O'Day had 15 disposals as well. The D's kicked a goal midway through the last quarter against the wind. We mentioned blustery conditions earlier on. But the Dogs looked at Brooke Lachlan, and somehow, someway, she got the goal. 9 seconds left on the clock, found herself some space inside 50, and on the left boot, it was a beautiful snap, and the Dogs were through. Where it went wrong for Melbourne in this game, what ultimately decided who was getting into the grand final between these 2 sides was Melbourne's 3rd quarter. They had 1 goal 6 to their name in the 3rd quarter. Kept the Dogs scoreless. I think the Dogs wanted them to try and score. They couldn't, and the one play that I could highlight you from a tee was the one with Alicia Newman. She picked up the ball. I think this was early in the 3rd quarter. Picked up the ball by the wing, outran almost everybody. Nobody could touch her. She ran it into the goal square, except Hannah Scott was probably a few steps behind her. And I think it was just the presence. So she didn't get anywhere near it. It was the presence of Hannah Scott that forced Newman to kick the ball into the post. Now, we can credit Hannah Scott for the chase, but it was Newman's mental capacity that cost her the goal. That ended up costing them the game, and I'm not going to knock Alicia Newman because she is an absolutely fantastic runner, and she can electrify a game like very few women can right now. But she's got to do better than that. She has absolutely got to do better than that. And in hindsight, when you think back at it, it probably sums up the inconsistency of Melbourne's season. They were good at times, definitely deserving to play the grand final when they were on, but when they were off, they were just so awful. And, well, third's a good result. It doesn't get them the grand final, though. They miss out by about 11%, a percentage of 11. But they've got the team to be there next year. There is absolutely no doubt. They've got the midfield, they've got the forward, they've got the back. It all depends on the fitness of Mel Hickey, who was sorely missed. But without question, the better team won this night, and the better team deserved to go through to the grand final. Bulldogs, I mentioned a few weeks ago, the Bulldogs are a legitimate premiership chance. Nothing changes here. They were absolute fantastic side. They've got winners on every line. Katie Brennan's inclusion this week from her ankle injury, badly needed. Because as good as Brooke Lachlan has been, there hasn't been many other goal-kicking options to go to. I've absolutely loved their recruiting strategy this year. They've gone for cross-code players, Ash Utri, Bonnie Toogood, and you've got Monique Conti, who's definitely in with a chance to take home the Rising Star Award this year. She's a basketballer. You got Jenna Bruton, won the St Kilda's Best and Fairest Award in the VFLW last year. And Daria Bannis is going to be a really good player once she comes back from that knee injury. You can just see it. And likewise, Izzy Huntington, last time they played Brisbane, she nearly tore the game apart in the one quarter. Nobody could stop it. So even if the Dogs don't win the flag this year, there's still a lot of talent here to suggest they'll be up there in years to come. And the list is still relatively young too. Only a handful of players are breaching 30 or are at 30. Absolutely love the list. To the final game this weekend, this was to decide who the Bulldogs would play in this year's grand final. Adelaide and Collingwood. Adelaide win, they were in. If Adelaide lost, that means it would be a Bulldogs Brisbane grand final. Adelaide started okay. They got the lead in the first quarter. Collingwood then bounced back and they hit Adelaide where it hurts. 8-5-53 Collingwood, Adelaide 4-8-32. The Crows denied another grand final spot in the end. Jasmine Garner kicked 3 goals from 16 disposals and 7 tackles. Christina Bernardi continues her great form. 2 goals, 12 disposals. Jamie Lambert, former Bulldog, 19 disposals and 7 tackles. Well, Jess Duffin had 18 disposals and 5 tackles as well. For the Crows, Ebony Marinov, 17 disposals, 8 tackles and 6 marks. Erin Phillips, 17 disposals. Chelsea Randall, 14 disposals and 5 marks in the back line. And Sarah Allen, also very, very good, 12 disposals and 4 marks. Ends Adelaide's season. The answer is simple. Why didn't they make it? I listed the first 3 players for Adelaide there. Ebony Marinoff, Erin Phillips, and Chelsea Randall. These are the 3 players that Adelaide look to the most. Or, at the very least, these are the players that can get Adelaide the ball consistently and effectively. Apart from, and I mentioned this last week, without Erin Phillips on the side, the Crows get exposed. And whilst Erin Phillips had 17 disposals, she didn't make her usual impact. She was okay, good even, but she wasn't the superstar that turned the game on the head. There are probably a handful of other Crows that do their bit around the ground. We mentioned Sarah Allen before as well. She's really emerged as a key defender. Her last month in particular has been a pleasure to watch. She reads the play beautifully, takes a good grab. Mentioned Courtney Kramer as well last week, All-Australian defender in 2017. Apart from that, there's not a lot of support for the Crows, and that's probably why they're not in the finals this year. As for the Pies, this result I mentioned last week it was hard to figure out Collingwood. Watched them on Sunday, and you can tell that they played, particularly in this past month, they played like they really want to play the football. They're tough, they're physical in the congestion, and they've got the forwards to blow the game open. Moana Hope has been really good the last few weeks. She was even the outside chance to pinch the goal kicking award. Jasmine Garner's in her home up forward. She had 3 goals. We mentioned last year in the State of Origin, she kicked 5 for Victoria. Chloe Malloy's emerging. She's going to be a really good player in the back line. There was a lot of questions at the start of the year about the decision to play her back because she usually plays forward, but that move's been really, really good. Garner plays really good football at either end. She's played forward and back this year. I love to see her go forward more often. Jess Duffin's been a real steady hand in the back line. She also used to play forward. So I like how Collingwood have got that right. Christina Bernardi has been one that's truly been impressive, particularly over the last month and a bit. She's kicked at least a goal in every game. Now, she's going to be a really important part in Collingwood's structure going forward. She has a lot of talent, and not only can she give you goals up forward, she also has a pretty good presence up the ground as well. So she looms as a really, really strong part of Collingwood's team heading into next year. Speaking of Collingwood next year, a lot of talk surrounding Moana Hope, the marquee player from last year. Will she be at the Pies next year? This is one of those questions where you have to just wait and see what happens. Personally, I don't see it happening. When you look at the start of the year, not even the start of the year, look back last year, and she just had a completely underwhelming season. Injuries didn't help. Didn't help that she was ganged up by 3 defenders a week. But she tried to better herself. Collingwood thought, right, let's go put you in the midfield in the first game. Did absolutely nothing of any relevance or importance in that game, and then she got dropped the week after, which I personally believe is a little unfair for somebody who doesn't really play midfield. So would I blame Mo Hope if she left? I don't, because Collingwood have treated her pretty poorly in terms of as a player and as a person, but who knows what happens? Where does Mo Hope go? Like, she could go anywhere really. I mean, she could even sign for a fledgling club. I think North Melbourne were really, really interested. Hell, she could even go for Geelong. Or how good would it be to see Mo Hope back in Bulldogs colours? The possibilities are endless where Moana Hope will be next year. Personally, it would be great to see her back at the Bulldogs. Bulldogs need as many goal-scoring options as they can get. Watching Mo Hope with Katie Brennan and Izzy Huntington for next year would be amazing. It would be so good. It could be a lethal 1-2-3 combination of forwards. So with the Crows loss, it sets up next Saturday's game between the Bulldogs and Brisbane to be held at Icon Park. It was going to be 1 o'clock, but we just heard that it's going to be 12:35 to be precise at Icon Park. That gives enough time for Brisbane fans to get to the game and then go watch Brisbane play at Etihad Stadium, because they play on the men's team play on the same day as the women's team. They play St Kilda Saturday afternoon. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Still a lot of negativity around Icon Park being held as the grand final. It holds about 24,000, and for a game that has a Victorian team and an interstate team, there could be a little bit of doubt about how many fans get to fill the seats. If it was 2 Victorian teams, then there would be some serious doubt. But I still maintain the fact that Icon Park is a good place to start in terms of your women's grand final. If it does lock out, then the AFL must sit back and think, right, where can we hold the grand final for next year? Because there is no way they can't do Icon Park if there is a lockout. You'd imagine the game will have a big crowd atmosphere. About 20,000 most likely be at the game. 15,000 even can set a good atmosphere. I'm very, very, very excited to see the outcome of this game. Brisbane Lions are going to be very, very dangerous. Bulldogs have been arguably the best team all year round. It's going to be a very, very hard prediction to tell you, really, because Bulldogs have been a little bit off the last couple of weeks. Brisbane Lions they showed on Friday night that they are very, very dangerous. Jess Wushner was really, really good last time the Bulldogs played Brisbane. Expect her to be a real focal point. Love to see Libby Birch get the matchup on her. Sabrina Frederick-Traub also has to be stopped. Lauren Spark did a very good job the last time these two sides met. I expect her to get the job on her. Katie Brennan's might be in a little bit of trouble with the match review panel. There was video footage of her with a sling tackle early in the last quarter. The Melbourne player that was tackled, Harriet Cordner, she got up a little dazed, but she played on. So there is no concussion there. There hasn't been any talk of delayed concussion. We await the match review panel's findings, and if she does play, then that's the right result. If she doesn't play, then I don't understand why people get cited for a sling tackle that doesn't hurt anybody. If Katie Brennan plays, I'd love to see Kate Lookins get the matchup. She's been very, very good. She's been outstanding, probably the best key defender in the AFLW all year long. Battle of the midfield is going to be really, really good. You got Ali Anderson, Emily Bates, Emma Zilke on Brisbane's side, a host of others as well. And then Emma Carney, Ellie Blackburn, Kirsty Lamb, Monique Conti's going to be in there as well, you can imagine. So there's two really, really outstanding midfield groups there. You've got winners on every line with both these sides. I'm so excited for this matchup. Who's going to win? I don't know. I'd like to say the Bulldogs, but I'm just so unsure right now. But I think if we base it on the last time these two sides met, I think the Bulldogs will get over the line just. And I mean just. The league best and fairest is almost around the corner. The AFL haven't given a real date for it yet, but one would have to imagine that it's not too far away. The first person that does come to mind when talking about league best and fairest is probably going to be Emma Carney for the Bulldogs. She's had a really great year. After 7 rounds, she leads everyone in disposals, averages just under 20 disposals a game, averages 3 marks as well, just under 4 marks actually, 5 tackles as well. She breaks the lines, creates the run carrier and the drive off in the midfield. She's a star, Emma Carney. She's an absolute star. And there would have been a case last year for Ellie Blackburn to win the award, but she's probably had a little bit of a down year in comparison to last year. But Emma Carney has been consistently brilliant for week after week after week. Ali Anderson's also been really good for Brisbane. Sits second in disposals, averages 18 a game. And like Carney, she's been incredibly consistent all year long. Her teammate Emily Bates from Brisbane also very good, 17 disposals. You could pick about probably half a dozen or so players that really are a strong chance of winning the award. Kate Lutkins could be an outside chance. She's gathered enough ball from the back line. It's not best and fairest awards don't really go to defenders, but she's been one that feeds consistently good week after week after week. Alicia Eva's also one that should be considered. There was talk of Courtney Gum being considered as well, but I don't think she's been good enough. Alicia Eva's been consistent. You got to look for consistently good performances. Dana Hooker could also be out there as well. It's an open field when it comes to the AFLW best and fairest. Wasn't so the case last year when Aaron Phillips won it, but this year I think there's a sense of unknown. Who do the umpires think's the best? Emma Carney would probably be the top dog at the moment. And personally, I think she thoroughly deserves it. As so another dozen or so. I'll rattle out a few other names here. Elise O'Day averages 17 disposals, 3 marks a game, and just under 6 tackles. Also very strong midfielder, consistently good, and she's also kicked 4 goals herself. And Karen Paxman, you got the Melbourne pair there. Also averaging 17 disposals. She polled pretty well last year as well. I think she was top 5, for memory. Jamie Stanton, also very good, 16 disposals, averaging 2 marks, 3 tackles a game. Chelsea Randall might be considered. She averages 16 disposals, 3 marks, just under 5 tackles a game. There's a lot of players that you can consider for the league best and fairest. Personally, my prediction will be Emma Carney because personally I think she's been very, very consistent. Very, very consistent in performance. She's probably been in the Bulldogs' best players over the past 7 weeks. If she hasn't been the best in all 7 weeks, she's probably been close. Before we get stuck into the All-Australian predictions for the women's team, just a quick update on Katie Brennan's situation. We reported earlier that it looked like she was in a bit of strife with her sling tackle and Harriet Cordner over the weekend. We can report to you now that the match review panel, aka our good friend Michael Christian, has just slapped Katie Brennan with a 1-week suspension, meaning that she will miss the game against Brisbane on Saturday, unless the Dogs decide to challenge it. I think they are going to. We're not quite sure about it. Okay, so they are going to challenge it. That's fantastic because personally, I think that's ridiculous. That is absolutely stupid from Michael Christian. Apparently, from what the reports are saying, that it wasn't for the sling tackle herself, it was her second misdemeanor, and apparently that automatically warrants a 1-week suspension by Michael Christian and the match review panel. No harm was done. So I don't understand why they would give you 1 week suspension, even if it was judged a dangerous tackle. It was in the one motion. What more could she have done? Absolutely ridiculous. That's gonna be a big blow to the Western Bulldogs forward structure, and maybe put Brisbane in the box seat to win the flag. Quite a miracle when you think about it. They were 5th start of round 7. Now on to the AFLW All-Australian team. Midway through the season, I should say, we wrote an article on my website. That's www.adbulldogcenter.com, and reviewed each team's performance so far and compiled the All-Australian team for the mid-season. I'll quickly run it down with you, in case you haven't read it. From the back line, we've got Libby Birch from the Bulldogs, Leah Kasler from Brisbane, Chloe Malloy from Collingwood, Hannah Scott from Western Bulldogs, Kate Lutkins from Brisbane, and Chelsea Randall from Adelaide. So I'm running by 6 defenders, 6 forwards, 4 midfielders, and 5 interchange bench. The AFL seemed to do it 5 backs, 5 forwards, 6 mids, and 5 on the bench. In the midfield, Talia Randall's doing ruck. She's had a really great year, and I think one person that a lot of people seem to overlook, along with Emma Carney, Alicia Eva, Ebony Marinoff, also in the square. You can't pick 3 better midfielders than there. There are those 3 right now. Then in the forward line, there's Rochelle Cranston from Melbourne, Katie Brennan from the Dogs, Jamie Lambert from Collingwood, Jess Wushner from Brisbane, Phoebe McWilliams from GWS, and Brooke Lachlan from the Bulldogs. Then on the bench, we've got Daisy Pearce, Jamie Stanton, Tegan Cunningham, Emily Bates, and Ebony Antonio. So on the bench, I've tried to go a little bit of variety, have a few midfielders, a forward, and a defender. And keep in mind, Cunningham can also play ruck if necessary, but at the moment she's here full forward. It's a very solid team, and I reckon most of these players will find themselves in the AFLW All-Australian end of season team. I think the awards the Tuesday after the grand final, I think it is. So that would be the 27th next week. I think the back line's pretty set. Leah Kasler and Kate Lutkins are the 2 big defenders at the moment. Libby Birch has had a fantastic year. She should find herself top 3, top 5 even in the Rising Star Award this year, as will Chloe Malloy. She's probably the hot favourite to win it right now. Hannah Scott has been incredible in the back line. When she's not running and creating from half-back, she's playing a superb lockdown job. And Chelsea Randall's just that incredible intercept defender. Talia Randall, we mentioned just before, very underrated figure. She wins a lot. She wins a lot of hitouts for somebody so incredibly undersized. You think of ladies like Erin McKinnon and Emma King, and even Melbourne's Erin Hoare, who's probably the tallest woman in the comp right now. But Talia Randall's just managing to find herself a lot of first tap to the ball each contest. I think she's thoroughly deserved her spot. Rochelle Cranston might be the one that I think gets dropped from this mid-year team. I think Christina Bernardi's had an amazing second half to the season. She could probably get the spot on half forward line. Katie Brennan could also find herself out. She missed 3 weeks. Tegan Cunningham can come off the bench, replace Katie Brennan, and probably and maybe replaced by somebody like Erin Phillips, who's played the 5 games, has kicked 7-8 goals. So, and she can be such a presence down forward. She's proven it in the limited time she's had on the ground this year. She could just get in the All-Australian team, Erin Phillips, I reckon. Daisy Pearce could be a straight swap for Elise O'Day off the bench. I think O'Day's had probably a much better year in terms of the impact. Daisy Pearce gets a lot of the ball. Not quite sure if she hurts them enough as opposed to last year. Last year she was very good. I think Jamie Stanton has had a good year, but I think Ali Anderson's had a better year. I think she'll replace Stanton off the bench. Emily Bates will keep her spot. Ebony Antonio's been a rock in Fremantle's defence. And the forward line looks really good. Jess Wushner, Bebe McWilliams, Brooke Lachlan. I don't think any of them will lose their spot. Particularly Brooke Lachlan. How can you not have a spot in the All-Australian team when you've just taken out the league's goal-kicking award? 12 majors for the year, and ended up with, and it was that 7-goal game against Carlton that almost locked it in, because nobody can come close to a performance like that. And so with that brings an end to the AFLW section of Doc's Footy Talk. You stick around now, we're going to have the AFL section on the way, a lot to talk about there. We've got the top 50, Robbo's top 50, the top 8 predictions. There's quite a few that have made some very, very outrageous predictions. And we're going to have a look at all the round 1 games. That's all coming up on Doc's Footy Talk. Welcome back to the AFL section of Doc's Footy Talk. If you're still with us, thanks very much for your company. Before we get to the top 8 predictions and Robbo's top 50, something I need to address at the moment, and it's something that's been bothering me since the weekend. It's another ridiculous AFL change. The theme songs. What's wrong with the old theme songs? The AFL have announced a change which may not go down so well with the diehard fans. This is reported from the 9 Wildwater Sports website. All team songs except for GWS and Gold Coast have been re-recorded with a higher production quality and lyric changes with the new songs to play in the stadiums this season. After some outrage over the move, particularly in Melbourne, which is home to some of the oldest clubs and team songs, the AFL cleared up exactly what happened. AFL General Manager of clubs Travis Auld said the option was offered to all clubs, but a few newer additions to the league did not have their team songs re-recorded, that being Gold Coast and GWS. From all reports, every other club's theme songs had to be recorded. In doing so, we offered all the clubs the ability to have a new recording to offer stronger digital sound quality. A number of the club songs are old recordings of diminishing quality. Minor lyric changes were only made following requests from respective football clubs. This is stupid. There's no other way to go around this. This is absolutely stupid. What is wrong with the old songs? I mentioned last week in regards to the AFL rule change where they're going to have to, where they altered up the warm-ups massively. Whatever happens if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It almost seems like they chucked that old saying in the bin. I know a lot of my fellow Bulldog supporters listen to their new version of the theme song. They're not happy about it. I'm not happy about it. Hell, even my brother, who's not even a huge fan of football, we're not nowhere close to where I'm standing, he doesn't like it. He's shaking his head at the moment. But it's not all bad. I don't think they're forced to use it. That's there for a choice. Essendon have come out and they've shunned their new recording. They're going to keep their old song, which I think is fantastic. I haven't personally heard all the club songs. I think Richmond's was one. I heard. I just heard the West Coast one. And I think there was a few other Victorian clubs as well. Also reported from Triple M is that Collingwood, Hawthorn, Port Adelaide and Geelong have also announced that they won't be using the re-recorded versions of their theme songs, although Sydney and Richmond have opted to use the new version, which is okay. But to do this is a slap on the face to the Fable singers who recorded all the old theme songs, and they've been there for countless years. I just don't understand why the AFL would do this. This is ridiculous. It's uncalled for. It's absolutely unnecessary. It's just completely asinine and stupid. If you have listened to your new theme song, let me know what you think about it. Fremantle was another theme song that didn't have a re-recording, which I think is okay. A lot of people criticise Fremantle's theme song. I actually think it's okay. I think it's fine. The 2018 AFL season is just days away, and with that, there is always people coming out and revealing their top 8 teams for the year, their top 8 predictions. One person that got my attention was former Port Adelaide player Kane Corns, who, it must be said, is probably quite an unpopular figure with the public. He sometimes he does put in a few ludicrous statements here and there, but again, that's what the media is all about. It's all about having a voice, and it differentiates from one person to another. Kane Corns released his season predictions the other day on SEN, and it's up on the SEN website here. He's got Melbourne in first place. He reckons Melbourne will win the flag, and he has the Western Bulldogs in third place. Now, I'm not going to argue about that, but I personally don't see the Western Bulldogs anywhere near the top 4. They're a chance to play finals, and I actually think they will. They're in my top 8, but they're absolutely nowhere near it. He also has GWS sitting second, and he's got Richmond rounding out the top 4. And rounding out the top 8, he's got from 5th to 8th, Port Adelaide, Sydney, Essendon, and Adelaide. Adelaide in 8th. Last year's minor premiers in 8th. The team that made the grand final, who probably, by all accounts, probably should have won the grand final. He's got them in 8th. Now, they've only lost Jake Lever and Charlie Cameron. They're good players, but they're not game-altering players. Jake Lever could be, but he wasn't there yet when he left Adelaide. Sydney at 6 is a bit of a concern. I probably reckon Essendon at 7 is a fair assessment. And Port at 5th is... Well, Port Adelaide can be anywhere, really. Anywhere from top 4 to outside the 8. Mark Robinson from the Herald Sun, the chief writer of the Herald Sun, will get to his top 50 momentarily. He's got Adelaide, Sydney, Richmond and Essendon in the top 4. That's 1 to 4. And he's got Port, Geelong, the Bulldogs and GWS from 5th to 8th. Reckons Adelaide will be the premiers, and Patrick Dangerfield will win the Brownlow. I should also point out that Kane Corns had Marcus Bontempelli winning the Brownlow. That's something I won't dispute. Marcus Bontempelli is a top 10 player. He'll be amongst one of the greatest Bulldogs of all time when he retires. But at the moment, there's still a lot of things in his game he's got to work with. Goal kicking is one of them. But the way he moves and the way he delivers the ball is just so good for somebody who's so young and still has to enter the prime of his career. I'm super excited for that. David King, who is a big-time analyst on Fox Footy, does a few columns in the Herald Sun as well, has from 1st to 8th, Adelaide, Richmond, Essendon, Geelong, Sydney, Port Adelaide, Melbourne, and GWS. Has GWS at 8th. It's a big call, and I think that's one that's probably a little bit more accurate than GWS finishing inside the top 4. Mark Robinson also had GWS finishing 8th as well. He reckons Essendon will win the flag, which is a really, really bold statement, and I'll tell you why. Because Essendon were very good. They exceeded almost everybody's expectations last year. Made the finals. You had young kids like Joe Danaher, Razio Fantasia, McDonald Tippenwoody, Zach Merritt. They were all very good. They're absolutely outstanding players. And they've came of age last year, and I expect them to go even further this year. But their off-season acquisitions, Devon Smith, Jake Stringer, and Adam Sard, they're handy, but there is still a lot of question marks on Jake Stringer. Adam Sard doesn't particularly bust a game open. I love the way he runs and carries the ball at times. He doesn't break games open. And Devon Smith's still very inconsistent. Wherever you play him, whether it's forward or midfield, he's still a very inconsistent player. I don't have Essendon finishing that high up. I don't think they'll win the flag just yet. But we're just going to have to wait and see for that. This is what gets me so excited about the AFL. You never know what's going to happen. Nobody predicted Richmond to win the flag at the start of last year. Nobody even came close to predicting the Bulldogs would win the flag the year before. Anything could happen. A lot of people reckon Melbourne are a huge chance. Kane Corns, for example, not entirely out of question. Although Melbourne have to get there first. They haven't played finals since 2006, and they should have been there last year. But there was a certain level of arrogance when the battle with Collingwood in the final round of last year. They just didn't get it together. They should have beaten Collingwood. Collingwood didn't have anything to play for, but they couldn't get the job done. They've got to get to the finals first. We didn't mention last week that Dermot Burton believed the Western Bulldogs could play the grand final this year. Well, he's actually tipped them to win the premiership this year. He has them finishing outside the top 4, but he reckons the Bulldogs will be premiers and Marcus Bontempelli will win the Brownlow. He's got Sydney, Adelaide, Port Adelaide, and GWS in the top 4. That's from 1 to 4, and then Bulldogs, Richmond, Geelong, and Melbourne from 5th to 8th. It's I won't argue the fact that the Bulldogs should be predicted premiers. I love the fact that people still like the Bulldogs after the year they've just had. There's still, I love it. I love people who still think the Dogs are a genuine chance. I've got them to finish 7th, not necessarily winning the premiership. There's still about 5 or 6 sides that probably are better than them at this stage. I will get to my top 8 just a second. Get to the Brownlow predictions right now. It's easy to go Dustin Martin or Patrick Dangerfield, last 2 Brownlow winners. They're probably the 2 top midfielders in the game at the moment. Nat Fyfe looms an outside chance. Some of these predictions, though, from the Herald Sun writers here, there's a couple of them saying Gary Ablett will get back to form. Not entirely ridiculous, but I think Gary Ablett's a little bit past it. He proved last year that he still has it to some degree. Took out Gold Coast best and fairest after playing a dozen games, but that's not that hard when you consider the talent that Gold Coast have. I'm not going to say they're rubbish, but they're young and they've got a little bit of excitement to them this year. A lot of intrigue about the Gold Coast Suns, but they don't have the talent. They don't, apart from Tom Lynch or Stephen May, they don't have the midfield talent to really cause some noise. James Hird believes Zach Merritt can win it. He's a really good player, Zach Merritt. He's a really elite outside runner. Loves the uncontested ball. He can win contested ball when he wants to, but at the moment he's just an incredible possession accumulator. Some calling for Marcus Bontempelli to win it. It won't surprise me when he wins it somewhere down the line. Not entirely sure if he's ready to go that step yet, but he's close. He's very close. I think he was top 5 or top 10 in the Brownlow last year. Don't really remember that off the top of my head, but he polled really well. I think he had 18 votes. Probably top 10, I think, but somewhere down the line when the Bulldogs become the dynasty that a few people are predicting them to be, Marcus Bontempelli can definitely be one person that can snare home at Brownlow. Rory Sloane also mentioned. He's a really good player, Rory Sloane. A lot of people underrate him because he plays for a non-Victorian club, but the work he's done at Adelaide has been something truly enormous. He's he is one of the many that carry Adelaide's midfield. One of the few, I should say. Whilst it's also very interesting to hear Mick Malthouse believe that Joe Danaher can win the Brownlow. I can't remember the last time a full forward won the Brownlow. I think it might have been Tony Lockett back in the early 90s, late 80s, I think it is. But Joe Danaher can't win the Brownlow. There's absolutely no way he can. He's a game changer, absolutely. And he proved that multiple times last year. He also got All-Australian, kicked 60-plus goals. He's going to be a Coleman medal winner, Joe Danaher. There is no question about that. He's got the height, athleticism. When he goes for the ball at the highest point, there is absolutely nearly no chance to stop him in the air. And when he's on fire like that, he's a very, very tough player to contain. So Joe Danaher, I wouldn't say win the Brownlow, but he's going to be a future Coleman medal winner. He's going to be a multiple-time All-Australian, most likely an Essendon Hall of Famer too. So don't laugh at Joe Danaher going for the Brownlow. We'll get stuck into my top 8 predictions now, and we'll go from 8th to 1st. So I have in 8th place the Bombers. Very good. They're a very electric side. They love playing an attacking game of football. Not quite sure whether, we've mentioned this earlier, I'm not quite sure whether Stringer Sard or Devon Smith can actually enhance this team to be a top 4 side. It's yet to be seen, but there's a lot in that side that will suggest that they'll play finals for a few years to come. Mentioned Joe Danaher just before. Love the way he goes about it. When he's up in the air going for the ball, he's almost hard to stop. And Michael Hurley on the other end of the ground has proven to be such a valuable asset in the back line. I'd also watch out for Andrew McGrath, the Rising Star winner. He's only 18, 19, just finished his first year. He's slated to go into the midfield a little bit more this year. And watching him, Zach Merritt, Dyson Heppel, probably Brendan Goddard will have a run in there as well. They're going to be a very good side, Essendon, this year. And I wouldn't discount them for top 4, but I wouldn't discount them to just finish in the top 8 either. They play really good football when they're on, but when they're off, they lose a few shockers. 7th, I have the Bulldogs. It's not bias, and trust me, I know there's still a lot of talent in this team. The team's still relatively young. Bob Murphy and Matthew Boyd go out, so there's a bit of a gap there at the half-back slot. That's why they put Hayden Crozier in there from Fremantle. I love the acquisition of Jackson Trengo from Port Adelaide. Very versatile. He's almost your Mr. Fix-It. Tom Liberatore, Luke Dowhouse. They're probably two of the few names that do have to bounce back from such a horrible 2017. I'm not sold on the forward line yet. Jake Stringer's gone. Stuart Cramery's gone. Tom Boyd is still a little away from playing AFL football from the reports I've heard. Josh Shackey, who's also a high-profile recruit, he needs some time to develop his game as well. That's probably the big concern at the moment. And Tory Dixon as well. He kicked 50 goals, over 50 goals in both 2015 and 2016. I don't know what his role is. When he's fit, he's a sharpshooter. He's a star. But unless the club can get the best out of him, that forward line's going to be the same thing. It's going to be so dysfunctional. And I'm not quite sure where the Bulldogs are heading. They could easily miss the 8. But I think the disappointment from last year is going to drive them back to the 8 this year. I have Melbourne in 6th. Like the Bulldogs, they should be fired up for missing the finals. They shouldn't have missed the finals last year. But you got to think, players that had brain fades last year, you think Clayton Oliver threatening the vocal Carlton supporter last year. You think about Thomas Bugg slugging Callum Mills last year. It just screams to you that they're not a mature enough side to play finals last year. But they've had a summer to work things out. They've got Max Gawn to come back on the side. He's fully fit now. Jake Lever's going to be a really big inclusion in the back line. They're going to be good. They're going to be really good. They're going to be top 8 side, I reckon. Clayton Oliver's going to have an All-Australian calibre year. Christian Petrarca has got to break out this year. I reckon he's teased around long enough. There's glimpses that he can be a grade talent, and he has to show it this year. Jesse Hogan's got to have another 50, 60 goal year. If they get all that, Melbourne can definitely be a top 4 side. I have just outside the 4, Greater Western Sydney, sitting in 5th. I've asked this question since last year. The Giants have a plethora of talent, but you can't win the big games without working as a team. And GWS are that team at the moment. They've got the talent in every line. Let's be honest here. They've got the talent in every line. Their forward line's great. Love Jeremy Cameron. Love John Patton. Their midfield's elite. Josh Kelly, Callan Ward, Dylan Shield. Also mentioned Toby Green up forward as well. He's a really great player when he gets his head straight. And the backline, very underrated as well. Nick Haynes, Phil Davis, they do the job without minimal fuss. But they haven't worked together as a team. And it's a team game that gets sides to the flag. You look at the Bulldogs in 2016, you look at Richmond last year, you look at Hawthorn's three-peat, Geelong in 2007. All the premiership sides have relied on team-oriented football, not just talent. And unless GWS get that together, they're not winning the flag. I don't even have them in the top 4. The Cats I have in 4th. Made 2 straight preliminary final appearances. They only lost Stephen Motlop, who's not really that big of a loss. Too inconsistent for my liking. And they've got Gary Ablett back. Probably the best player in the modern era. You can argue that age and attrition has got the best of him, but he still showed last year, in the minimal time he got playing at the Gold Coast, that he's still a very damn good player. And you add him with Patrick Dangerfield, Joel Selwood, Mitch Duncan, that midfield is going to be hard to stop if they're all fit and firing. Dangerfield kicked 45 goals playing up forward at times last year. Ablett's proven to be a goal kicker as well over the years. And you got Daniel Menzel, who kicked 40 goals last year. Tom Hawkins kicked 51 last year. They're going to be a good side. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Geelong will be a top 4 side. Where they finish is anybody's guess. I have them at 4th at the moment. I've got the reigning premiers in 3rd. They're not getting a premiership hangover this year. They proved it in the JLT series. They didn't muck around. They blew Essendon out of the park. I think it was 87 points. Blew North Melbourne out of the water, as we all kind of expected. But the way you watch their football in the pre-season, I don't think they're going to have a premiership hangover this year. I mentioned this last week, a lot more to this team than Dustin Martin, Jack Revolt, Trent Cotchin and Alex Rance. There's a lot of other players. They're very good players, but they don't get the recognition because of the players I've just mentioned. Toby Nankervis is a huge part of this side, and he proved to be such a valuable recruit last year in the ruck. And I expect guys like Daniel Rioli, guys like Dan Butler, guys like Brandon Ellis, they're going to have another great year. Sydney I've got 2nd. Hard to believe that they were 0-6 at the start of last year. And even harder to believe that they actually made the finals after that. We can point out the usual suspects for Sydney: Lance Franklin, Luke Parker, Josh Kennedy, the captain. But you got to look at the younger players. Isaac Heaney and Callum Mills need to blossom into the stars that Sydney believe they can be. Alir and Lewis Melkin will take over Heath Grundy, who's been a fantastic contributor for Sydney over the years. Expect them to take over for when he eventually retires. I love Will Hayward and Ollie Florent, 2016's first round draft picks. Their big problem, though, is the ruck. Kurt Tippett's now retired. Sam Naismith's gone for the year. And Callum Sinclair is currently battling injuries. I don't think he'll play round 1. They need to solve that issue. And then there is Buddy. Can't say anything that's already been said about him. He's probably one of the biggest stars in the modern era. Is he better than Gary Ablett? I don't think so. But he's up there as one of the best of the modern era. He'll definitely kick 1,000 goals before his career is done. There's no doubt about that. And he still is a very vital part in this Sydney team, despite the fact he's 31 years of age right now. But that last game in the home and away season, kicked 10 goals against Carlton. There is no signs of him slowing down this year. I think he's going to have another great year, another Coleman medal caliber season for him. And in first, I've got the Crows. Yeah, they got smacked in the grand final. Yes, they've lost two good players in Jake Lever and Charlie Cameron. And Brodie Smith's not going to be there this year as well. Suffered an ACL injury in the finals last year. But the Crows still have a lot of talent in this lineup that can get them there. Taylor Walker, a lot of criticism about him as a leader. I think he's okay. Just sometimes he has really quiet performances. Josh Jenkins, a lot of people get him mixed as a flat track bully. He still gets you goals when you need them. The forward line is still very, very good. The back line is still very, very good. Daniel Talia gets overlooked a lot. Rory Ladd's an elite run and carry defender. And the midfield is still great. Rory Sloane, Matt Crouch, they're all Australian midfielders. Brad Crouch is a very good midfielder. You got Bryce Gibbs into the fold now. A lot of criticism about him in terms of him playing soft, but that's not his job. His job is not to be a contested ball back. His job is to be the man who gets the ball on the outside, delivers it to your forwards. I think that's his role in a side who thrives on a really good attack. He's going to be a very valuable contributor to the Crows this year. Also, very unlucky not to get in the sides of Port Adelaide. Not convinced from last year. They finished 5th, but I'm not convinced that they'll make the finals this year. A couple of reasons for that. First reason is they struggled to beat any finals caliber side last year. They couldn't even beat the 8th place West Coast at home that in the first week. And then their solution to getting themselves into the top 4 is to acquire guys like Jack Watts, who I reckon he's probably the one recruit out of the 5 that they've brought in that can do the most damage. Tom Rockliff's very injury prone. Stephen Motlop is a very damn inconsistent player. And Lindsay Thomas, Lindsay Thomas is washed up. Jack Trengove is washed up. That's no fault of his own. Injuries have absolutely tortured him throughout his time at Melbourne. And I'm not completely sure what Trent McKenzie's game is, aside from the fact that he's got a massive left foot on it. Can't see Port getting through the 8 this year. Mark Robinson, the chief writer of the Herald Sun, released his top 50 earlier in the week. Always a very controversial subject, whether it's the start of the year or the end of the year. But I absolutely love the work he does, particularly in these top 50 lists. Very fascinating thing. I do my own top 50 as well. Currently underway as first 2 parts are out already. If you haven't seen that, go to www.adbulldogcenter.com. Have a look at that. We'll have a look at the top 20 because this is where it probably cops a lot of criticism. So he's got Dane Zorko from Brisbane at 20, Paddy Ryder from Port Adelaide at 19, Eddie Betts from Adelaide at 18, Trent Cotchin from Richmond at 7, Scott Pendlebury at 16, Patrick Cripps at 15, Tom Mitchell at 14, Josh Candy from Sydney at 13, Marcus Bontempelli at 12, Rory Sloane from Adelaide at 11, Josh Candy from West Coast at 10, Joel Selwood at 9, Joe Danaher at 8, Josh Kelly at 7, Gary Ablett at 6, Lance Franklin at 5, Alex Rance at 4, Nathan Fife at 3, Dustin Martin at 2, Patrick Dangerfield at 1. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when examining this list is that Gary Ablett's too high. 10 years ago, you'd probably say, yeah, he's definitely top 10. He'd definitely be in the top 5 discussion 10 years ago. But you're looking at a bloke who's in his mid-30s now, has been injured frequently over especially the last few years. But his best football when he's fit is still top 10 worthy. Now, I will agree that Gary Ablett does deserve a spot in the top 50, but it is no way just outside the top 5. Top 20 possibly, but he's definitely not a top 10 player. I do agree with quite a few of it. Joe Danaher probably not top 10 either, not yet anyway. It'll definitely be there, but he's not there yet. Joel Selwood too high, I reckon. Very good player, but he's not top 10. I'd have a few there before him. We'll roll through some of the others here. Robbie Gray at 22, not quite sure about that. He's a genuine match winner wherever you stick him. Tom Lynch from Gold Coast down at 33. He's a star, Tom Lynch. It's easy to forget a couple of years ago He kicked 66 goals in a struggling Gold Coast. Who else we got here? Clayton Oliver at 46. Taylor Walker at 50. I'd probably have Clayton Oliver a little higher. Taylor Walker would probably not get in the top 50. Otherwise, it's actually quite a solid list. But a lot of people will call him out and say he's drinking the red, but it's quite a good list. Don't agree with Gary Ablett. I don't agree with Robbie Gray being that low. I'm not entirely happy either with Marcus Bontempelli being the only Bulldogs player, and I'm definitely not happy with the fact that he's got no St Kilda player in there. Seb Ross is a really good player. Jack Stephen is elite. Jake Carlisle's a top 50 caliber player. I had him at 50. Tim Membry, if he gets back to 2016 form, he's definitely top 50 worthy. I'd like to know from Mark Robinson, where is the St Kilda players? We need to see a couple of them at least. Ben Brown got in. Ben Brown plays for a team that a lot of people make fun of. But the big question from his top 50 is Dangerfield or Martin at 1? He's got Dangerfield at 1. I won't tell you who I've got at 1. You need to tune into adbulldogcenter.com and find out, or like the Facebook page at Bulldog Center. They are arguably the two best midfielders going around in the game at the moment. Alex Rance at 4, I reckon is a good... I reckon it's pretty safe to say that Dangerfield, Martin, Fife, Rance and Franklin are the best 5 players going around in the league at the moment. But number 1 would definitely by far be between Dangerfield and Martin. We have a look at Patrick Dangerfield's averages from last year. Averaged nearly 30 disposals, nearly averaged 2 goals a game, 6 tackles, 5 inside 50, 7 clearances per game. He's an absolute freak. Dustin Martin, biggest year of his career so far in terms of awards. You know, mentioned Premiership, Brownlow, Norm Smith Medal, won the AFLPA MVP. He averaged 30 disposals, averaged 1.5 goals per game, 4 marks, 6 inside 50, 6 clearances, 3 tackles. Now, statistics aren't the be-all, end-all in deciding who makes a great player, who makes the best player. But you just have to watch these two and figure out for yourself. There's no right or wrong answer here between who's the best player. People will go for Patrick Dangerfield because he breaks the midfield open. He's proven to be such a presence up forward, and he's proven time and time again that he's an absolute game winner wherever you stick him. But the flaw in Patrick Dangerfield's game at the moment is that he's got no premiership. He's got the Brownlow, but he has no premiership to back it up, and that's what AFL players play for. They play for the premiership. Dustin Martin's done that, and Dustin Martin proved all throughout last year that he is a match winner, absolutely proven match winner, and he proved it in the grand final, particularly in that second half. He kicked, I think he kicked a couple of goals. Yeah, 29 disposals, 2 goals, 6 clearances, 3 inside 50s. In the eyes of some, probably didn't deserve the Norm Smith, but he was still such a presence in there. Oh, Mark Robinson's got Patrick Dangerfield. I've made my decision up. You're going to have to wait for that on Friday. So who's the best out of Patrick Dangerfield and Dustin Martin? Each to their own, I say. Right, we'll get to the round 1 predictions just before we sign off here at Doc's Footy Talk. We're going to talk about Thursday night's game, Richmond and Carlton. Expected to be about 90,000 people there. Over 90,000. Carlton are still rebuilding. Richmond are looking very, very good if we're judging them on pre-season form. I expect a 5 to 6 goal win to the Richmond Tigers. They cannot lose to Carlton. Friday night at Etihad Stadium, Adelaide playing Essendon. It's been reported that Taylor Walker will not play. A bit of doubt on Brad Crouch. It's going to be a really fascinating game here. The Bombers, they'll be out with something to prove. The Crows will also be out with something to prove. I think Adelaide will do it. It'll be a very exciting, fast-paced game. We know Essendon play a really high-tempo sort of game. Adelaide usually do that as well, but I think Adelaide just have a little bit more talent than the Bombers do to get over the line at the moment. So I think Adelaide are going to get over probably by about a couple of goals. St Kilda play Brisbane Saturday afternoon, Etihad Stadium. Brisbane finished last year on the wooden spoon. I think they'll improve. I think they'll improve greatly. Probably still finished bottom 5, but they're going to be nowhere near the wooden spoon this year, I reckon. Luke Hodges' presence in the backline, I reckon he'll play backline a fair bit this year. The St Kilda can't afford to underestimate Brisbane. If they do, they lose. That's how much I'm rating Brisbane at the moment. A lot of people quick to write off St Kilda at the moment. I think there'll still be a genuine finals chance, but they have to prove straight out of the bat that they are not to be trifled with here, St Kilda. I think they'll win, probably a very comfortable margin. I'd say between the 40-45 point mark, we'll get them there. Port Adelaide play Fremantle at the Adelaide Oval. Saturday twilight game, 4 o'clock. Fremantle going to be very interesting to watch this year. They've looked okay during the preseason, but I'm not entirely sold on them just yet. Ross Lyon's trying to instigate some sort of rebuild phase here. Port Adelaide, they've made it clear they're going all out to get to the top 4. There's no doubt I think Port Adelaide will win this one. And the fact that they've got the flat track bully tag at the moment, they're probably going to win by about 80 points. 10 goals at the very least. Gold Coast and North Melbourne's going to be a very interesting game to watch. Saturday night at Kazales. Gold Coast not playing at their home in Metricon Stadium for the first half of the year due to the Commonwealth Games. North Melbourne, a lot of people write North Melbourne off really early. I know I had them at 17th, but they were competitive for most of their games last year. I reckon, and under Stuart Dew, Gold Coast look to at a sense reinvigorated. I reckon the Suns will prove some sort of challenge. North Melbourne will get up though. I'm not writing them off just yet. And Hawthorn Collingwood Saturday night MCG, probably going to be another huge crowd, 70,000, 75,000, maybe even 80,000. Hawks are in a very odd spot this year. They're not entirely rebuilding, but they're not entirely there yet to contend either. They've still got great players in every line, but they've got to rely on younger players such as rely on the fitness of Jaeger O'Meara. Ryan Burton's going to be a star. James Sicily will be a star. And they've got younger players as well to work with. Harry Morrison's somebody that's been talked about a lot during the preseason. Played the final game last year. He was pretty good in that. I think the Hawks will do it. The Hawks will win just. But don't underestimate Collingwood. I think they're not a garbage team, but they just don't know how to win games yet. They'll get there. Whether they do it with or without Nathan Buckley is an entirely different question. On to Sunday afternoon, GWS Bulldogs at the Monaco Oval. I'm not calling it the University of New South Wales Stadium. Monaco Oval's what I've always known it as, and it will continue to be like that. The Bulldogs will want to bounce back, although I'm not entirely convinced they're going to do it against GWS. They're not going to beat GWS over there. The Giants just seem to have all the talent at the moment to get where they want to get top 4-wise, but they struggle at the final hurdle because I mentioned earlier they don't really have teamwork. They don't know how to work as a team. But I think the Giants will get over it comfortably. Probably Melbourne and Geelong. This is the game. I mentioned at the start of the show. This is the game that I'm the most interested in watching. Going to be very interesting. Melbourne missed out in the top 8 by a game that they really should have won. Geelong, a lot of people expected them to be up there again, particularly with the inclusion of Gary Ablett. Going to be a fantastic battle between Geelong's midfield and Melbourne's midfield. Melbourne's midfield, Jack Viney's not going to play. Nathan Jones is still very, very good. A lot of people underestimate his talent. You got Christian Petrarca's going to break through. Clayton Oliver, Jordan Lewis, all these guys, they're capable of beating Geelong's on-ball brigade. And if they're absolutely serious of playing finals this year, they have got to beat Geelong this weekend. They've absolutely got to beat Geelong this weekend. I think they can. And the final game of the round, Sunday afternoon, or Sunday afternoon over there in Western Australia, West Coast Sydney playing at Optus Stadium. West Coast getting the honours of being the first male team to play the newly built Optus Stadium. I don't know where West Coast are at the moment. They lost their 2 best midfielders, Matt Prittis, Sam Mitchell, to retirement last year. Luke Shuey's going to have a great year. We know that. But where's his help going to come from? That's my big question. Nick Nananui's going to be a good in. Missed all last year with an ACL injury. But he's no good when the only person he's tapping it to is Luke Shuey and nobody else around him. Sydney, on the other hand, they're expected to be a top 4 side this year. They always are. If not, the very least, a finals team. Sydney should get up. And that almost brings an end to another week of Doc's Footy Talk. Very excited for this weekend, to be honest. Going to be absolutely off tap in terms of football. Best of luck to the Bulldogs and the Brisbane in the Women's Grand Final. Personally hope the Dogs get up. They've been the best side all year. Hope Katie Brennan gets up from a suspension. From all reports, it doesn't look likely. She'll probably miss. She will challenge. She will challenge the suspension. Will be unlikely she gets through it. But we can all hope for the best. Every Bulldogs supporter can hope for the best. Until next week, this is Alex Doherty signing off. Best of luck to your team this weekend. Goodbye for now.